Trigger warning. This episode contains stories of abuse in detail. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Youth Rights Podcast. And today we are here with two people who are former foster care kids, Rebecca and Bailey. And, they're going to be talking about their experiences and what they went through, and just, telling their stories. Rebecca, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Vigil. I'm from Colorado.
Hi, I'm Bailey McCoy, and I am from California, and I was in the foster care system, and I got taken into the foster care system at age 15 in November of 2022. And I got taken because my mom and stepdad at the time were doing domestic violence very frequently due to drug use. And it's been quite the journey. And right now I'm currently a non-minor dependent in extended foster care with a THP program.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a lot. So do you want to, just go ahead and walk us through what you experienced in detail and what led up to that happening?
Yeah, so for example, when I got pulled into foster care, it happened in, like I said, in November, and I think it was late November of 2022. And when that happened, at the time that it happened, my stepdad was at his mom's house with my little brother, and my mom, I think it was the night before or something like that, she had gotten arrested because of stuff they got into. And so I was at home with my mom's friend, and then the police showed up and said that I'm being taken into foster care, and they told me to pack up a few of my belongings, whatever's necessary for now, and that we'll come back and grab the rest later. And so that happened, and then I remember being in the county office quite frequently in search of somewhere to be, somewhere to stay, and I had gone in and out of quite a few different homes. And then until one day in late December, shortly before New Year of 2023, I had finally found a place which was my sister and her dad and stepmom, because we shared custody of my sister before foster care got involved and everything. But after foster care got involved, they got full custody of my sister, and that's where I lived when they found a place for me in late December of 2022, right before New Year. And then I stayed there for quite a while, and due to the trauma and mental health issues I had, it was quite a struggle, and every day was just a problem, and it was chaotic for me every day in that home. And I didn't get along with them either. They didn't support me, even though it was my own sister and her dad and stepmom. And then in October of 2023, they couldn't deal with it anymore, and I couldn't deal with it, and they put me on a 14-day notice, and I got sent to a group home all the way in Los Angeles, which was about 8 or 9 hours from where I was living and from where I've always lived and been raised in. And I was there in that group home from October 2023 to July 2024, and then around July of 2024, I was back up north in Northern California with my sister and her dad and stepmom again. And so they were saying that they wanted to have me back there so that I could graduate high school. And that, yet again, was another struggle. I was there from July 2024 till about June of 2025 after graduating high school. And it was, like I said, a constant daily battle, and I just couldn't take it. And then at one point in December 2024, I had even done an attempt and ended up in the mental hospital, including on Christmas Day.
Wow. So do you want to talk about what were those problems at that home that led to, everything going down and being super chaotic? And
yeah, so what happened was, number one, I was trying to heal from all the trauma I had already been through, and it was quite hard for me considering everything I was trying to heal from and everything new that I was going through. And also, my sister's stepmom never treated me fairly. She had favoritism and was just not supportive of me and did not treat me well. And for example, my sister was her stepdaughter But when speaking to other people about us, she'd call my sister as her daughter, but call me as her foster daughter, making me feel like I wasn't even part of the family and like I was just othered out.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, too, she just was never supportive of me, was never trying to help me. And I felt like every day was just a battle of me trying to fight for my breath every day just to make it through the next day.
Yeah, I get you.
It seems to me that all of us who've gone through foster care have dealt with some of those feelings. I was quite a bit younger when I went through mine. My foster care started back in '99. Similar situation. My parents were young, dumb, doing drugs and partying in ways they probably shouldn't have been. My dad actually actively tried to kill my younger brother and I twice.
Wow.
And somehow at 4 years old, I knocked him out. I still don't fully understand if I just shoved him hard enough that he fell into something. But it was enough to knock him out long enough for me to call the police and get them to the house. I am one of the people on this planet that has survived someone I trusted holding a gun to my head.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's awful.
And foster care did not make it any easier. The way I was put into foster care, it wasn't even the police officers that pulled me away. It was our mother put us on a police station bench with my little brother asleep on my lap and said, "Take them, I don't want them anymore."
Wow.
So we all have a heavy set trauma. And I will say, I don't know anyone that comes out of that system that isn't angry for at least the first 10 years.
Bailey, do you want to talk about, that trauma and like how it affected your life, going forward from that type of situation?
Yeah, so when I was in foster care, like I remember at one point when I was in the group home from October 2023 to July 2024, when I was in there, I had been physically assaulted 3 separate times by 3 separate girls.
Wow.
And each and every time I had called the police and was trying to report it and, get justice served. And unfortunately, in situations like that, when it involves juveniles, it's kind of a big privacy issue where you can't even know if anything was done for you or if anything was done about the situation. And I'm all about making sure people like that are held accountable, who try to hurt others or who try to take advantage of others. I'm all about those people being held accountable. And so not knowing if any justice was even served was very difficult for me when I was in that group home. And also when I lived with my sister and her dad and stepmom after I had been in the group home, most of that was for my senior year when I lived within the second round. And when I was a senior in high school, the only thing that really kept me going was some of the supportive staff there that I had known and a couple friends that I had there that were really big supports, including like people who just helped keep me going and supported me every day, even though they knew how much I was going through. They didn't leave me in that. They helped me through it every day. And to this day, I always tell myself and remind myself, like, man, if it weren't for some of those supportive people, I wouldn't even be here today.
Yeah, of course. Those are definitely a big part. And it's really good, have people that, will support you in those situations, especially when you get to a point, like with what both of y'all went through, where the people that you are supposed to be trusting, like the people that are in that position where they're supposed to be like your guardians, like they don't care and they don't have your best interest at heart. And it's like, you don't feel like you can trust them. You don't feel like that you can rely on them. And it's just really bad. It's such a terrible thing for people to have to go through at a young age, and it really affects, their life going forward from that.
It creates permanent trust issues. It does. I have spent more time in therapy and psychology appointments than I care to admit to.
Yeah.
And I still, to this day, my circle of friends is, I can count them on one hand. And where I have reached out to my biological family to try and get some closure, it's tentative.
And you don't feel like you actually got that closure at all?
By the time you get around to asking those questions and getting those answers, everything is so rehearsed that it doesn't feel genuine or sincere in any way.
Yeah.
What they say.
Yeah, of course. Bailey, what was the situation in your home that led up to you getting in foster care in the first place? And like, kind of what was like the way that situation was building, and like what were those experiences that you were going through that led up to that?
Yeah, so when I was still living with my bio family and everyone like that, it was my mom and stepdad, and my stepdad that I had at that time was my little brother's biological father. And at the time, my little brother's dad was my stepdad throughout all of this before I came into foster care. And when I was living there, what happened was my mom and stepdad did drug use and stuff like that, and they did domestic violence due to it. And there were times where they did it in front of me and my two younger siblings, and I was always having to keep them safe. I always had to keep them from witnessing all of that. And at the time, me and my sister had shared a room together, and my little brother had his room, but my little brother at the time was only like 5 or 6 years old, and we had to let him into our room and protect him and keep him safe from all that. And he'd be scared. My little sister would be crying her eyes out, and I felt like I was a parent already, like an adult, when I was still supposed to be a kid, and I had to protect both of them. And on top of that, too, when I lived with them all, my mom would frequently be gone while my stepdad was out of town working. She would claim that she's at the grocery store, and she would almost always be gone for anywhere from 3 hours to 8 or 9 hours.
Wow.
And me and my two younger siblings would often be left at home by ourselves, and I'd always be having to look out for them. And oftentimes my mom wouldn't even let me know she's leaving, or she would be really hard to get a hold of after she already left. And it'd be for long periods of time, leaving me and my siblings to fend for ourselves.
When you were living through that situation, did you ever like yourself attempt to report it to the police or CPS or anything, or what happened with that?
So sometimes there were even a couple of times where when my mom and stepdad would get into physical fights, there were a couple of times where I had to call the police because of how bad it got. And the police, I don't even know what they would do or anything. I just know that it took quite a long time before they actually finally did whatever was necessary to protect me and my siblings. And ultimately that resulted in foster care getting involved. And also, there were multiple occasions before foster care got involved where I was running away from home a lot, but I wouldn't go far, because we lived in a mobile home park, and the mobile home park we lived in, there were multiple different mobile home parks lined up along the same long road. And what I would often do is go to another mobile home, potentially even in one of the other parks, and I would literally go to strangers' houses and tell them that I need the police called and that I'm being abused and everything like that. And then what would happen is the police would come out, bring me back home, talk to my mom, and then release me back to her, even though I was clearly in distress.
That's ridiculous. Like they knew about the abuse and stuff, and then they just decided to put you back there?
Yeah.
And how many times did that occur?
I don't even know the exact amount because it was so many. Like, I couldn't even count how many. I don't even know how many. I just know it was way too many times for me to count or keep track of. And when all that was going on, I had also done multiple suicide attempts when I lived with my mom and stepdad. Because when I was in foster care, I did one, which was in that December of 2024 when I was a senior in high school. But before foster care, I had actually done multiple and had been in mental hospitals and before and during foster care, I also had to be on medications a lot and see psychiatrists. And I basically couldn't even function if I wasn't on medications. And now that I'm 18 and I'm going to be 19 in May, and I'm learning to like be more independent, and I'm getting out on my own, and I'm out of that toxicity, I now don't even take the medications anymore. I was able to taper off of the 3 medications I was on, and I'm doing so much better than I ever did when I was a minor. And when I was a minor, everybody would always tell me, you're going to hate being an adult. I don't hate being an adult. I love being an adult compared to that traumatic childhood.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's insane that they like the fact that they observed this happening and they just like took you back and put you with them, especially with how much it was affecting you. I mean, if you said like multiple suicide attempts, going to the mental hospital, going to psychiatrists, I mean, it's like obvious that this was like ruining your life. And the fact that the people in authority, like the police and the people that should be protecting you, like
they don't care.
Yeah, it's like they just.
My dad tried to kill us, and we ended up back with that family before we ended up in foster care.
With your dad?
Yeah, with my dad.
Wow, that is it's insane how many times that these things aren't taken seriously, that they just would rather take the easy way out. And the easy way out is just, stick it back with the family. They'll talk to the family, give them a stern warning. They'll get better. But no, like those people who are abusers, those people who, in your instance, literally tried to like kill members of their own family, they don't just like get better by a stern talking to from a police officer. Like, yeah, no, it's insane how they just decided that would be the way to go about things. That's awful.
Mm-hmm. And it's weird to me how often the stories are parallel.
Mm-hmm.
They're not repeated, they're not the same, but they definitely rhyme. And it's always repeated abuses. We call the police, we try to turn it in. If you're younger, they're more likely to believe you. Thankfully, I was 3-4 years old, so it was easier for them to actually hear me out because you can't lie at that age.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're a teenager, they're going to listen to your parents. And if they say that you're a liar, they're going to mark that on your record.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have previous history of mental health, they're going to use it against you to try and keep you where you are. And it's very ridiculous to me to see, like, mine was in 99. And I was in foster care from 99 to 03.
Mm-hmm.
I was thankfully legally adopted, and my adopted mom, yes, she was strict. She was military. But, she cared enough to actually do the legwork and work through the neurodivergencies and the PTSD that came with those situations.
Yeah. And it's good to, have someone that will do that and, actually try to help rather than, what the original family would just try to do, of just not really care at all about what you're going through and just actively try to hurt you.
So, and when I was in foster care, those medications that I had gotten off of when I became an adult, there were 3 separate ones. It was Abilify, Guanfacine, and Lithium. They had me on all 3 of those when I was a minor. And the fact that I was able to get off of all of them and I'm doing great now as an adult, that proves that it was environmental.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mentally ill. I was in environmental toxicity situations.
Mm-hmm.
And also before I was in foster care, those mental hospitalizations I had, they were 5150s.
Mm-hmm.
And there were multiple of those. And despite all of that, nothing was done when it should have been done.
Wow.
And it was crazy stuff. And whenever I would do those attempts, my mom would get mad at me and yell and curse at me over those attempts.
Wow. I like that you bring that up. Because there's been I just did an article about this. There's been recent laws and restrictions put in place. For example, in Idaho, there's a restriction where minors cannot contact the suicide hotline without their parents' consent, which is just ridiculous because, like you just described, there are parents who, if they find out their kid is having a mental health or a suicidal ideation crisis, they don't think to themselves, they don't think, how can I help? How can I support? They think to themselves, you're a burden. I hate this. Why are you doing this? Like, you're a problem. And I feel like this type of behavior by parents is more common than people realize. And to put kids in situations where they have to rely on the people who are causing the mental health problems in the first place. So the fact that, with what I was talking about that law, the fact that you have to, rely on the people that are causing your mental health problems to be able to receive the support for them. And that's just insane to me, the fact that, they go on the basis of, oh yeah, parental rights over, kids' medical decisions. But a lot of the times the parents are the source of those mental health problems. And I feel like the people who are in those situations are the most vulnerable.
It sounds like you were in a similar situation where you were an older child in the family, right, Bailey?
Yeah, because I was 15 when I got taken into foster care, and there was my two younger siblings that lived with me and stuff like that. And my sister, I think she was like 9 or 10 around those times, and my little brother was like 5 or 6.
So there's an extra mental health burden that comes with being the eldest child to begin with, because especially if you're that much older than your siblings, you're seen as sort of a secondary parental figure. In my case, I had my younger brother. He was only 2 years younger than me. And our situation was so severe that it actually activated my maternal instincts so heavily that they had to separate us in foster care.
Wow.
Yes, I saw that reaction.
What?
They separated us because I was so protective of him.
That's insane. But like y'all should, have that connection, because you two went through that together. I mean, that's something severe. Like, y'all should be put together. Why would they do that?
We would still have visits. It was once a week at most.
Wow.
It was supervised out of center. And we still actually do have communication. We still talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Our adoption situation is a little bit unique because the families we were adopted into already had a previous set of siblings that had been separated.
Mm-hmm.
So the boys all grew up out on a ranch and the girls grew up in city, and we would meet up a couple times a year for dinners, or we'd go out and stay on the ranch for a few weeks during the summer. But I am very much aware that at 4 years old, I should not have had such a heavy maternal instinct that I knew how to change a diaper, that I knew how to cook and clean and make sure the things that were going to injure my little brother weren't within his reach.
Yeah.
But it was something I had to learn to do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Bailey has some similar things she could attest to, where she had to learn how to be a mother without ever having kids. I'm almost 30. People don't have kids.
Yeah.
And I still have issues with that. I still struggle with that 23 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I liked, Bailey, what you mentioned about, the mental health problems all being environmental and then them trying to medicate you for that. A lot of the times, like, mental problems that people face are a lot of the times not often related to actual brain chemistry issues, but they're related to environmental problems. So it's like, you weren't depressed because your brain's messed up and you had a brain chemistry problem. You were depressed because of the situation that you were living in, and that is how it was burdening you. And I feel like a lot of the times these mental health professionals are very quick, especially with young people, are very quick to medicate antidepressants and stuff like that. And they think that will solve the problem, the mental problems, especially with depression that they're facing, is a direct result of what they're living in. So putting them on antidepressants, that wouldn't solve the depression. That wouldn't solve anything. That's just medicating them when they don't need it. They need a cure, and the cure is to be taken away from the situation that is just destroying their mental health.
So in my case, they did not medicate me while I was in foster care. They required the medication after, but they diagnosed and medicated me at 6 years old.
Wow. With what?
Adderall, Ivance. They rotated through a couple of different antidepressants and ADHD medications. I was never on less than 2 or 3 meds at a time.
Do you feel like those medications like helped you at all, or did they make things worse?
When they worked, they definitely helped me focus better. But most of the time I felt little to no change. There wasn't a whole lot of difference in my behavior. And in my case, it kind of felt like just being a guinea pig.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I relate to that feeling of feeling like a guinea pig, because those 3 medications I mentioned, those are not the only ones I have ever been on. I have been on many medications before those 3, and those 3 were just the ones that I was on towards the end of my childhood. But yeah, I totally feel that feeling.
How do you think those medications affected you?
Yeah, those medications, I mean, I personally, like, I think at the time I was saying that they were helpful, but honestly, I feel like that was just me trying to hope that they were helpful, even though they actually probably weren't. Because when I turned 18 and everything like that, I started feeling so much better being out of that toxicity. So even though I would frequently say that those medications were helping me, I think that was just my mind being optimistic and hopeful that they were.
Yeah.
And I think that I was not feeling any better. I was just trying to make the best of the situation.
Yeah, I get that for sure.
And I'm the same way. I got off the meds as soon as I could. And I've been off them for over 10 years now. It's clearer. It's easier to think, easier to move. I don't feel like a zombie every day. I don't feel like I have to prove something constantly just because you're on that, and you quit feeling broken.
That's a good way of putting it. You know, I can't relate to y'all's situations and, you know, the way with the foster care and everything, but I know when I was really little, my mom got me diagnosed with ADHD, and they put me on Adderall when I was really little, I think like 6 or 7. And it gave me, my reaction was very weird. I've never been good with medications, but my reaction, it gave me extremely bad intrusive thoughts and like OCD, to the point that, like, you know, like the weird OCD things where you have to flip a light switch the amount of times. And like, it only gave me that only started happening after they put me on the medications. The Adderall, it got weird to the point where I felt like if I did like little things wrong with the OCD, like if I didn't flip the light switch enough times, it would make it to where I did something wrong. Like I would feel like I did something wrong. So then I would feel like I would have to punish myself as a kid. And this is like me being like 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever at this point. And I was like, oh, well, now I can't play with this specific toy for the rest of the day or something. Me as like a little kid. And then eventually, like, my mom ended up realizing that it was messing me up, and she took me off of it. And the reason why I know that it was the Adderall was because as soon as I got off of it, those symptoms started to just go way down. I stopped having that as badly. So I definitely see that in a lot of instances when they put young children on these medications because they think it's going to help them, a lot of times it's environmental what they're going through, and they don't necessarily need it. For sure. And it's like, you know, with things like ADHD, those are definitely very real ways that, like, you know, you work differently. But at the same time, like, I know I'm ADHD, but like I've like been able to manage, you know, that, and, you know, still, you know, be able to focus and get everything done without needing medication, just because, you know, I know how my brain works and I know how to like manage things on my own without, the need for medication or anything like that. But yeah, so I really like what y'all brought up about the medications, how you kind of feel like they were very quick to put y'all on that.
Well, and I actually found out when I was 17 from a pharmacist that the dose of Adderall they had me on was excessive, which made it that much worse for me. It made it that much bigger of a fight with my mom. It actually turned into a full-on blowout fight that ended up with me leaving the house.
Wow. So it was that she felt you needed it and you didn't want to be on it?
The dose I was on was for a 250-pound male. Wow. I was 115 pounds.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, so you definitely didn't need it for that.
I told her if she was going to keep me on that heavy of a dose, I would just leave. I would pack a suitcase and I would leave.
Yeah.
And she didn't fully believe me at the time. And I did. I walked the hell out of the house. I left that day. And it did end up with me sleeping on the streets for a couple of nights. It ended up with me couch surfing for a few years.
Aww.
But it also ended up with me eventually getting my own apartment. And the friends who lived with me back then are now tenants in my house, actually.
I had a similar experience to that because when I had graduated high school, because I graduated June 5th of 2025, and when I had graduated high school, what happened was because of how much I had been throughout my high school years, it's crazy because I managed to graduate on time despite everything I had already been through.
Yeah.
And I managed to graduate on time. And a lot of what helped me be able to do that was, even though I barely made it, what helped me be able to do that was the supportive staff and friends that I had that were always there for me. And what happened was when I graduated, after the main ceremony where everybody walked across the stage and everything, as everybody was like socializing and wandering around talking to their family and friends after the main ceremony, what happened was I was doing that too. I was trying to see the staff and friends that I had and thank them for all their support and everything. And when I was doing that, my sister and her dad and stepmom, they gave me 10 minutes and they went out to the car to wait for me and gave me 10 minutes to say my goodbyes to everyone I had. And so after 10 minutes were up, while I was still out there, my sister's stepmom texted me, and I didn't have a car license. She threatened me via text to leave me stranded there, and it was a night graduation too. It was already dark outside. And she threatened to leave me there if I didn't come out after the 10 minutes were up, and I didn't even get to say goodbye to everybody. And so what happened after that was when I had to go out to the car, otherwise I'd be stranded, what happened was I went out there, and when we were leaving, I was very livid with them. I was livid. I was angry and yelling at them and everything. And because of my reaction, my sister's stepmom decided to drop me off at my drug addict grandpa's house, where my also drug addict mom was currently living. And so she dropped me off there for the night because she didn't like my angry reaction. And so because I was refusing to be around my grandpa and mom at that time, since they are drug addicts, I ended up wandering the streets all night. And mind you, where I'm talking about, it's very rural, and it's kind of like more like the country, out in the country kind of area, like that. It was like that, and that's where I wandered the streets of all night. And then the next morning, I got a ride back to my sister's stepmom's house, where she stopped me in the doorway before I could enter and said that I have a week to pack up and move out because she didn't like how I reacted the previous night. And so after that, I ended up actually posting on local Facebook groups, like urgently seeking somewhere to stay until I could figure things out. And one of my high school friends' moms reached out to me, and I went and stayed with them from June 7th to July 14th. And I was very grateful because they didn't make me pay rent. They weren't like making me pay rent or anything, and they were housing me until I figured things out, which was very nice of them. And so then on July 14th, when I moved out of there, I ended up in an apartment through the extended foster care THP program. But then the problem at that point was I was only in that apartment from July 14th till about mid to end August. And then they moved a male roommate into this apartment. And I wasn't comfortable because I was the only female there.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to move a male roommate in there with me, I was not comfortable with that. And so then they moved me to this house in their program where there were male and female roommates, which I was more comfortable with since females would be around.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went there, I was only there from late August until October 1st because the male roommates had started stealing my food because we all shared the same fridge in that place. And the male roommates started stealing my food, and I was having conflict with one of the female roommates, and things were just not okay, and I wasn't okay in there.
Yeah.
So then I moved to a completely different THP program with a different apartment where I am right now, and luckily I have no roommates, so that's not an issue. But the issue of where I'm currently at is that this program that I'm in right now, they keep actually violating my rights and keep creating problems for me. And I'm currently in the process of switching to another THP program, meaning another apartment.
What are the problems that they're causing for you right now?
Yeah, so what's happened in this program is I've been here since October 1st of 2025. And when I came into this program, things seemed fine initially, and they seemed like a better fit for me. And luckily, even though I haven't had any roommate problems, there have been other issues. Like, for example, in mid-November, I had been off of those medications since late September, so almost 2 months by that point. And I was doing fine. I felt great. And then one day, my county social worker and THP worker had come over saying they were going to come over and visit me. And so I was expecting it to just be a typical weekly visit, whatever.
Yeah.
And when they arrived, they told me that my psychiatrist doesn't recommend that I be off my medications, and that I need to either go back and take them again, start taking them again, or I need to get a note from her stating that I don't need them anymore. And if I can't do either of those, they'll put me on a 2-week notice. And so my mind went into full alert mode, and I was like, what the heck are these people doing?
Yeah.
And so at that point, once they had left, I called the mental health clinic and said what's going on. They said that my psychiatrist isn't going to write that note because she doesn't recommend that I be off my medications. So I had to request a new provider to see me and do their own evaluation. And at that point, I had also contacted my foster care attorney. And what he did was he didn't even mention it as a rights violation. He said that I have the right to refuse medications, but that how the program responds is up to their discretion. But the truth is, I have the right to refuse medications without retaliation unless there is a court order. There was no court order, and they were trying to kick me out for refusing. And so after doing my own research, that's when I found out that they were retaliating, and that's against my rights. And then in January, on the 8th of January of this year, I had that appointment with the other psychiatrist, like the new one. She did her own evaluation of me and her own assessment with her own questions and everything. She didn't see anything concerning. She didn't even schedule a follow-up appointment because she saw no reason to. And so ever since then, that's been the end of the medication issues. And I even also called the ombudsman since my attorney wasn't helping me. I had to call the foster care ombudsman, and they did their own investigation and did their own thing. And luckily that's in the past. But then there have been new issues now. Like, for example, I have a neurological condition called Chiari malformation that causes muscle weakness. And also I'm very small. I'm specifically 4'11", and I weigh about 105 pounds. So as you can guess, I'm very small, and the muscle weakness does not help at all.
Yeah.
And so it makes it hard for me to do certain tasks that require even like quite a bit of strength. And for example, one of those is like pushing a grocery shopping cart when I'm in the grocery store. And so I prefer to just have someone help me with that while I grab items off the shelves and pay for my groceries. And the program said it was an independence issue and that my condition isn't documented anyway. So I got a doctor's note from my doctor confirming I had the condition, gave it to both my workers. They still claim that it's an independence issue and that I need to navigate that and figure out how to do that on my own.
That's insane. It's really upsetting when people don't take concerns seriously. I mean, it's like you had the doctors know, you did your own research. I mean, it's awesome that you did your own research into this type of stuff and figured out that they were violating your rights and they're acting, out of their control to be able to do that. But yeah, this just they don't take your concerns seriously. I mean, you know yourself better than anyone. You know your conditions and you know that like when you were on that medication it wasn't helping and then now that you're off of it you feel better. So it's like obviously you wouldn't want to be on that anymore. And then for them to try to force you back onto that and then violate your rights is that's insane. But it's definitely good that you did your own research into that and everything.
Yeah, and also when that was all happening, so I even tried calling community care licensing for that whole disability issue because I was like, they're refusing to provide reasonable accommodation to me because I'm already very independent. Like, I'm good at budgeting. I have my own bank accounts. I have my own secured credit card. I schedule my own doctor's appointments and everything. I'm pretty independent. And so for them to say a reasonable accommodation that I need is an independence issue.
Yeah.
And then on top of that too, as I'm in the process of transferring programs, what's been happening recently that made me break and ready to transfer to another program is there's been a lot of maintenance issues with my apartment that I'm in. Like, for example, when it was Christmas time, the heater suddenly wasn't turning on. And so then when I had the THP worker come out the next week, and I had to use a space heater in the meantime. But when they came out, the HVAC filter was really dirty, and so we got a new one for that, and the heater was fixed. But then recently, I've been having plumbing issues. I kept trying to contact my THP worker and tell her, like, I keep having maintenance issues, and you guys are not doing anything about it. And the lease of the apartment is in the name of the THP program, and they actually even manage my rent and utilities with the money they receive from the state. But then they tell me that I need to contact property management to get any maintenance issues resolved, even if it's a habitability issue. So then when I started calling the maintenance and property management people, they were hard to get a hold of. And when I finally did get a hold of them, they never contacted me back, even though they said they would. And so I was left in that situation with basically nothing, no help. My workers would not help me. And so then I decided, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I need to transfer to another program. This is getting too much. So on Thursday, I had a CFT meeting, which means like a child family team meeting. And so because I'm a non-minor dependent, it was just me and my team, my foster care team. And when we had this CFT meeting, we were discussing the plan to switch my programs and do the transfer process. What happened was a couple weeks ago, my THP worker gave me $2,000 from my budget through the program, because in the programs that I'm in, like, they keep a savings budget for you so that they can release the funds when you leave their program or when an expense pops up that you need money for. And so I asked her so I could purchase a vehicle since I'm trying to get my driver's license. And when I did that, she gave me the $2,000 from what she thought was my $3,800 in my savings through them. And so everything seemed fine. And then on Tuesday, when I saw the backup THP worker, because my other one was out for the day, but when I saw the backup THP worker, they said that there was an administrative error, meaning they gave me more money than I actually had. And so what happened was they said that now my budget is in the negative and asked if I could pay back the $2,000. And I was like,
what?
Oh, like no, like you guys did your error on your
end. Like that's their fault.
Right. And so in my CFT meeting, they started telling me that I need to pay back the $2,000 or else my transfer process will be impacted. And there was no paperwork about this. They did not tell me anything further other than that my transfer process will be impacted. And so now I'm actually working on scheduling a state hearing where like an administrative judge decides what to do here. And I got the ombudsman involved. I got community care licensing involved because now they're preventing me from transferring because I won't pay for their errors.
That's ridiculous. Wow.
Wish that wasn't a story I heard so often.
I know. They're all about money and power. They're not about us. They're about money and power.
I know 3 other people who went through a very similar situation when they aged out. One of them was one of my foster sisters while I was in the system. She had so many problems when she aged out that not only did she have trouble getting a used car, she had a similar problem where they said there was an administrative issue on her expenses that was supposed to be from what she had.
Mm-hmm.
Now, thankfully, the last foster family she was with did let her work, so she had enough savings to cover it and just make them shut up. But I swear, every single one of us, as soon as we know right from wrong, we know they're getting paid for us being in the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And it shows. It shows in the meetings we have. It shows with those psychiatrists they make us use, because every single psychiatrist they make us use while we're in the system or while they're monitoring us after adoption is one that will always, always, always put you on medication. In any of the extended programs, it's just as bad as being in the original system, if not worse, a lot of the time, because they'll say that they give you money for an expense and they'll turn around and say, oh, no, we made a mistake. We put it on the wrong budget. We need you to pay that back now.
Yeah, and it's their fault that error even happened in the first place, but they just, don't care. And I like what Bailey, you talked about all the work that you went through to deal with their problems. I mean, for them to say that the grocery cart thing is an independence issue on your part, when to me, everything that you're describing and you're telling me, you sound extremely independent, like you're going to all this effort to fix the issues that they're causing for you. Like instead of just sitting there and dealing with it, you're actually, taking initiative and, trying to fix those problems when that shouldn't even be your responsibility. Like they're causing those problems for you. And, it's up to you to have to deal with that. And then for them to just like disregard that completely and just be like, oh, that's your fault. Like it's an independence issue. You're not independent enough. When you obviously are. I mean, you're handling the situation better than they are. So yeah, it's very weird when they don't take your concerns seriously. And it's so insane how like the whole time from everything you've been saying, it's like they never take anyone's concerns seriously. It's like the police made you go back with your mom originally before you got into foster care, and then it's like now like the people that you're with now, like they're not taking your concerns seriously either. And I just feel like the voices of young people who are living in these situations are just always silenced and always just put down because like they just are treated like they're just less than. And it's really upsetting that the people that should be protecting them are the ones that don't seem to care.
Exactly.
We all become super hyper independent because of that.
Mm-hmm.
We become some of the most functional members of society because we learn that the people that are supposed to take care of us, that are supposed to give us these accommodations, that are supposed to be making sure we get to do the things that everybody else is able to do, don't. Mm-hmm. And they don't care. So we have to learn to fight and stand on our own, and we lose part of our childhood doing that.
Yeah.
We lose that part of us that keeps us from being overbearing. And no matter how big or small we are, always come off as intimidating to other people for that, because that's just how we are. We've learned that we don't need to rely on others.
Yeah.
But we do it because we've learned there is no other way. There isn't someone we can just depend on to get that done.
Mm-hmm. And the people that you're relying on that should be the ones helping you are the ones who aren't. It's bad these systems that are put in place to protect people and to make sure they're, going into society are just not good. And
they work to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And that point is when you're the age of 2-3 years old.
Yeah.
After that, the system is so heavily flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because after that age, most people don't want to adopt you.
Yeah.
But we'll be completely honest here, Bailey, right?
Yes.
And with each year, the likelihood of you being adopted drops exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get to aging out of the system, like Bailey has, technically.
Extended foster care, at least here in California, it's for people who are eligible 18 to 21. So once you turn 21, you're no longer eligible. But what they're supposed to do is provide housing and financial assistance and help you become independent. And to participate in the program, you have to either be attending college or getting a job, or you have to be like working on like throwing down the barriers of those things. And so that's the main like legal eligibility requirement.
See, and our extended foster care is more limited here in Colorado. It's usually reserved for those that have visible disabilities.
Yeah, no, for us here, it's like it's available towards like anyone who turned 18 in the system, and then your county social worker visits you once a month on a monthly basis, and you still have CFT meetings. It's just you're more independent basically, but you're still being supervised. And that's the thing that I don't like, is that they expect us to do the responsibilities of an adult, but then we also get the freedom and privacy of a child.
Mm-hmm.
So Colorado's a little bit harsher about it, I guess. That or everybody I know that's aged out of foster care just refuses to get the help. But as from what I've learned is our system rolls what help you do get for housing into part of Section 8 in this state. It's very weirdly set up, but they purposely set aside specific numbers of Section 8 housing for those who age out of the system. And they have a set amount of time to get a job, get a vehicle, and get themselves sorted before they just fall off. I don't know that they're going to change that anytime soon. I know that it's not great no matter how you look at it. And I know the situations get worse the older you get in the system.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah. And it really is such a bad reflection, because to see that every single person, like I don't think I've ever known anyone who's gone through a system like this that has come out of it feeling like, yeah, no, they helped me, they gave me the support I need. Like I interviewed another person when I was writing this blog about social media bans, who was like a moderator of this huge like safe place server. And she said that she grew up in the foster care system, and she was currently in it. And she dealt with so much like abuse and stuff, both in her own home and then in the system that she was currently living in, that if she didn't, have like her friends that she met online and like that support system, she probably wouldn't be here to this day. And it's just like every single person that I meet and then I hear from that has gone through something like this, it's never a good supportive system. There's always something wrong that like damages them or like hurts them or something like that. And I definitely feel like those systems need to be reformed, and we need to like increase funding, and also with like supervise the people that are in charge of it. I mean, like the people who aren't doing their jobs, like what you said with Bailey, with all the things you were talking about, like those people just weren't doing their jobs with things that they should be doing.
They weren't.
Yeah, and
those people, like, what's crazy too that I don't like is, like you said, those people that work for that CPS system, they need like more oversight and authority figures, making sure they are actually doing what they are supposed to do. And not just for people who are part of the system, but also like I've had experience like with that one friend I was telling you about, like who his mom like is very hurtful. What happened though is like helped file a CPS report. And what's crazy is that when you file a CPS report, at least here in California, you don't get to know like what the outcome is or what CPS decides to do, or if they decide to do anything. And they claim it's for privacy reasons, but the truth is they're protecting the privacy of the agency more than the privacy of the child. And the truth is that if they don't tell you like what they did or if they did anything, you have no way of knowing if they actually listened to what you told them as a concern. And at that point, they can simply just act like they never even received the report and they won't get in any trouble because you have no idea.
I like what you mentioned about those concerns, and they put it on privacy. I recently was doing some research into the juvenile justice system, and I, published some web pages on that pretty recently. But I was researching into juvenile jury trials, and juveniles do not have the right to a trial by jury in most states. Some states they do, some states it's conditional, but most states, like a good 3/4 of them, I would say, they have no right to a jury trial. And the justification that they use is juvenile hearings are like civil hearings and they're not criminal, so the same rights of the Sixth Amendment doesn't apply. But that's just saying that, like, your freedoms, that's like you don't get the same freedoms. It's like constitutional freedoms are now based on age, which I just think is an incredibly ridiculous way to put it. And
it really is.
Yeah, and they say it's because of privacy. They're like, oh, we need to make sure the privacy of the juvenile is respected. But it's like, if I was in a situation and I was accused of a crime, I'd want a trial by jury. I'd prefer that. Right. And it should be a choice. Right. Like,
I think in Colorado, if they're 15 or above, you can ask to be tried as an adult instead, just so that you can have a jury.
Yeah.
But the closest they can get for an actual juror, you have to be registered to vote. So you have to be 18 in the first place to serve on a jury. The jury of your peers is non-existent in the first place.
Yeah. And I think Colorado is one of those states that's conditional, to where there's certain conditions that it takes to be to have a jury trial as a juvenile. But I feel like it should be unconditional. Texas, I'm in Texas, and it's one of the few states that it's unconditional access to jury trial, which I'm lucky about that. I mean, I've never had to have a trial or anything, because I've never been charged with a crime. But it's good, the fact that Texas is one of those few states that let it happen, but most states they don't at all. And yeah, they say it's for privacy. Same thing with CPS. They're like, oh yeah, we can't have these records out there for privacy issues. But it is when like a government system is covered up and they're covering up things that they've done, it allows them to get away with things that they shouldn't be getting away with. They're so heavily protective over those systems, and I definitely feel like that's a big concern. Just like, they have too much power. It's like they have too much power and they're not held accountable to the people that they need to be held accountable for.
Right, because they literally don't have any accountability, because nobody in the general public knows what's going on other than those who are literally in those systems, experiencing what's being done in those systems. So there's no way of holding those systems accountable, because nobody is aware of how those children are being treated.
And when you're in the system, your voice gets buried.
Yeah.
Just like with foster care, just like with anything that has to do with anyone under the age of 18, because you're not of age, your voice gets buried. And the level of fight that is required to even attempt to change that requires everybody on the inside of those systems to speak up. And I don't know about you, Bailey, but in the middle of foster care, I just wanted to get the hell through it.
Yeah.
Since I was, as far back as I can remember, I've always just wanted to escape the toxicity of what I was dealing with and become a flippin' adult, where I have my own freedom and my own ability to be independent and make my own decisions and choose who I surround myself with. Because another thing too, speaking of all that, like when I was in foster care, my social worker, my county social worker, it was a different one from what I have now as a non-minor dependent. She was not very good at all, and it's crazy because I actually recently have been researching, like, because sometimes if I know somebody, I'll look up their name on Google to see what pops up. I've been researching, and there's actually a current lawsuit in county with CPS, and my social worker that I had as a minor is involved in that as a defendant, and so is the same attorney I've always had who's never advocated for me. And so a lot of the names in this lawsuit I'm actually familiar with. So there's an active lawsuit right now on them. And when I was a minor, my sister's stepmom was always threatening to call my social worker on me whenever I didn't follow her orders and stuff like that. And I literally like every time she would call my social worker would take her side. There have even been times where my social worker actually cursed at me herself.
Wow.
Cursed at me. And then also that same social worker, she's part of the military, and a lot of people would say, well, she's a part of the military, she's trained like that. And it's like, okay, but the military versus CPS when you're dealing with children, whole different game.
Yeah.
You gotta know how to be understanding and empathetic of those children and get past that military mindset, because you should not be acting towards children the way you act in the military.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Military mentality that will help us? Yes, to a point. Screaming at us? First of all, that never works. We already survived that. Throw that out. It doesn't work.
Exactly.
Trying to embarrass us? I'm sorry, we literally move houses with giant black garbage bags full of our clothes. That's what they do, Zane. You get a big black leaf rake bag, they throw your clothes in it, and you get 10 minutes usually to throw in whatever you can carry, and they move you to the next home.
Dang, that's
I know
insane.
people, including myself, my stepsister, my brother, and several others, who still to this day can't have a black trash bag in their house because foster care traumatized them.
Damn. Yeah, that's insane how they do that. It's like dehumanizing.
And when I was taken into foster care, I was told to just grab a few of my belongings and then go with it. And so, but they even said that I'd be able to go back and grab the rest of my belongings another time. I never got to go back and grab them. And what I ended up leaving behind is terrible, because some of the things I left behind was my 8th grade diploma and like the medals I had earned in 8th grade at my graduation in 8th grade. And not only that, but also I was unable to get like a lot of like belongings and clothes and like decorations that I had in my room back then. And one of the very worst items that I did not get to grab because they never took me back to grab my belongings. One of the worst, most sad items I did not get to grab was my great-grandfather's ashes.
Aw.
Yep.
Yeah.
Most of us end up with, I think we call it a doom box now. We permanently have a box that we just never unpack. And it just sits there. And it's usually something.
Yeah, and it's crazy you say that, because because of how many times I've moved in the apartment I'm currently in, I've been here since October 1st. I still have not unpacked most of my stuff because I'm used to moving too much. I'm trying to keep unpacking and then packing again.
Wow.
I am 29. I have moved 23 times in my life.
That's insane. Yeah, and it gets to that point where that's just in your head. Like that's your mindset of I'm always on the move. I'm always running. I'm always going places, and you don't get to have that feeling of like security in one spot, of just feeling like you're safe in that one spot.
We never check a bag when we get on an airplane. We always just throw it in a duffel bag and it fits in the overhead bin because we know how to do it.
Yeah. And I kind of want to go back to something that y'all were talking about earlier about how there's a lack of accountability because the people that are in there that are in that system rarely get to, have their stories out. And one of the things that I was doing research onto was apparently, and I didn't even know this, apparently if like a minor is interviewed by like an organization like ours or like media like the news or something, minors do not have rights over their own privacy. So they don't have the ability to waive their own privacy rights. Meaning if like their face gets published or something by like a media organization or like by a nonprofit organization like ours, the parents can sue. And then so that gets to the point where media organizations are so afraid to actually interview these minors and get their stories out to the world because of the fact that they're afraid of being sued. And there's ways around it. I mean, technically it's about identifying information. So if you don't have their face in there and you kind of like modulate the voice a little bit, it should be legal. But the fact that they do have the ability to sue, and a lot of organizations don't really have the ability to fight against that. So it's just insane to me that like a minor can go to like a media organization or something and like talk about their story of like what they experienced with like their parents or something being the ones to oppress them and put them down. And then the parents can be the ones to be like, oh, take this down. They don't have the right. Like, I'm not giving them the right to get that story out there. And it's such just like another way that young people are put down by this system that just doesn't respect them as equals, and like that they have a control of their life, that they have autonomy. And it's just it's a really upsetting thing about that. And I definitely feel like all of these policies need to be changed.
First time I've actually been able to speak about what happened to me in this way. Mm-hmm. Through growing up, I've talked to people. I've been on the news a couple of times for different things for the local news. I've spoken about foster care and how messed up it was, mm-hmm. and it got edited out every single time.
Wow.
So this is actually my first chance to reach out publicly, visibly, and to say how messed up that system is. Mm-hmm. If I was 3-4 years old when I went in, and I remember that as soon as the parents learned I could read, they literally handed me books and said, go sit in a corner.
Wow.
I was taught to be seen, not heard. Mm-hmm. I was ignored a lot of the time while I was in the homes. My last foster home before the family that adopted me, I literally had a futon and a bookshelf in an alcove off the stairs. I didn't even have a room.
Damn. Yeah. And a lot of the way that y'all, describe going through this, it just seems dehumanizing and I can kind of see how it just makes y'all feel like you're just not treated on the same level as everyone else. And it's just such a sad thing that so many people have to go through. And the stories, like you said, the stories are like parallel of every single person has some type of story of how they were mistreated by this. And, it's really hard to get those stories out. And that's what I'm definitely trying to do is, get that out to the world for sure. And I'm really glad that y'all got to talk about this. But I do think we're going to go ahead and wrap up because it's been like about an hour. Is there anything, like any last thoughts that y'all want to give about your story and your situation or anything that you want to say?
Honestly, there are programs starting that can help. One that we have here in Colorado, I don't know if it's in California. I think they may have a branch over there where they're trying to get these kids backpacks so that you're not running around with a trash bag feeling like you're worthless, mm-hmm. in order to help these kids be able to move from place to place. At the very least, to help them feel a little bit more human. Yeah. If we can work on helping those groups grow, that would help.
For sure.
Yeah, and for my final thoughts, like the final thoughts that I should say to wrap this up is, like, as we have clearly discussed, like, the system is not what they try to disguise themselves as. They are not actually out to help us or protect us in any way, shape, or form. They are out to take advantage of us, and we are their source of money and power. That is what we are, and that's the plain and simple truth. We are their source of money and power. Mm-hmm. And, like, the way I look at it is, like, years ago, women were the property of men. Women had to fight for their own rights through years and decades of protests and advocating and speaking out. And many women even lost their lives over it. Mm-hmm. And part of me has a very unfortunate feeling that for youth and for younger people to have rights and to not be the property of the adults and their parents, part of me has a feeling that it's going to take the same very long, like, terrible journey just for youth and children to be seen as real humans rather than the property of the adults.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great message to leave off with. That is what we do here, and that's what we're trying to change, is the stigma around how young people are just viewed as property. They don't have autonomy over their lives, over their medical decisions. They don't have the ability to vote and represent themselves. Like, they're seen as property of their parents. Their parents are allowed to treat them in whatever way possible. And then if it's not the parents, the systems, the foster care system, CPS system. But yeah, I thank y'all so much for coming on and telling your stories about this. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things I didn't even realize were as bad as they are. But this is what NYRA does. This is what we will advocate to change and fix these problems in these systems. And your stories are going to be really helpful for raising awareness of what people in these situations go through. So thank y'all both. It was great.
Yes.
Thanks for having us here today.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And that's I guess that's it for the episode.